We're going to go up. So hello, everybody, and welcome to the first Out Montclair Trans Day of Visibility celebration. It's very exciting. My name is Celeste Fiore, Celeste Argentino Fiore, if we're giving full names, which we are today. We're being our full and authentic selves, bringing all of us here. My pronouns are they and them, and I am a proud, non-binary, trans-masculine human being who's also a lawyer here in the state of New Jersey. And I wanted to start off with a land acknowledgement. And I looked up how to pronounce the proper names in the land acknowledgement that I'm about to read, things like names and locations, but any mispronunciations or stumbles are due to my own slips of the tongue or inability to pronounce certain sounds correctly, not due to any inherent difficulty in the indigenous language itself. So the land upon which we gather is part of the traditional territory of the Lenni Lenape called Lenapehoking. The Lenape people lived in harmony with one another upon this territory for thousands of years. During the colonial era and early federal period, many were removed west and north, but some also remain among the continuing historical tribal communities of the region: the Nanticoke Lenni Lenape Tribal Nation, the Ramapo Lenape Nation, and the Powhatan Lenape Nation, the Nanticoke of Millsboro, Delaware, and the Lenape of Cheswold, Delaware. We acknowledge the Lenni Lenape as the original people of this land and their continuing relationship with their territory. In our acknowledgement of the continued presence of Lenape people in their homeland, we affirm the aspiration of the great Lenape chief Tamanend that there be harmony between the indigenous people of this land and the descendants of the immigrants to this land, so long as the rivers and creeks flow and the sun, moon, and stars shine. Thank you. I also want to thank the church for the use of their space and for your time and energy and just generosity. Of course, the Out Montclair board, our executive director, our amazing staff, including Marie Cottrell, who is the event coordinator, director, mastermind of today's festivities, and her army of volunteers, volunteer coordinators, donors, our advisory board. Just thank you. I'm truly glad to be part of this community. I am on the board of Out Montclair, and I'm also the founder and chair of the Trans Affirming Alliance, which is a Montclair-based 501c3 that provides or helps other community organizations provide affirming services for transgender people whom they are already serving. So I'm just going to take a couple of minutes to kind of kick this off, and I want to say thank you to Marina Carrera for encouraging the land acknowledgement after I shared that I wanted to speak about ancestry and lineage today. Marina's poetry collection, Tanto Tanto, helped guide me to a viewpoint from which to see queer love through first-generation culture, helping me navigate through my own trauma around queerness and the queer immigrant experience. I am literally second-generation queer, and perhaps raising a third generation of LGBTQ humans, but that's not my journey and not my story to tell. And although I'm still processing, what resonates the most with me in this moment in the celebration of Transgender Day of Visibility is the shared connection over feeling like an outsider even when you're on the inside, that you never quite feel fully part of any specific community, so that you're building networks and layers of love and light and people so that you are covered in the rainbow quilt of all the types of love we need and deserve: parental, familial, communal, and self. So recognizing that most of the people in this room do not have the benefit of transgender, non-binary, or gender non-conforming elders or other ancestors in their parental or familial unit, I will share with you some of the sweetness of having that energy, that kind of energy in your early life. So I didn't grow up with my biological father. From the time I was in a bassinet until the time I was about 8, I had a mama and an omi, a butch lesbian native Spanish-speaking Cuban immigrant, although I have no idea what her status was, who was my second parent from 1982 until about 1990-ish. She walked with such swagger and kept her hair cut short. So if you've ever heard that song Ring of Keys from Fun Home, that was Omi. So little tomboy, masculine presenting me who desperately wanted to keep running around with no shirt on after the age of 7 and wanted a short haircut and loved being mistaken for a boy. That little Celeste knew that they weren't a butch lesbian, despite what any bullies might say to the contrary. Recognizing that most of us in this room have not had the benefit of communal connections with transgender, non-binary, or gender non-conforming elders or other ancestors, I share with you some wisdom that has served me well and might help to serve some of you. In 1999, 2000, I met an openly transgender person around my own age. He was a binary transgender man. I knew that I was not him, nor was I exactly like him. During that same period, I became involved in the reproductive rights movement, the reproductive justice movement, through some clinic defense, but primarily through acting in the vagina monologues. I did that during college, I did that during law school, and or at least after college, and I think I might have done it in law school, but I haven't done it for a number of years. But performing My Angry Vagina, if you're not familiar with the monologue, they helped me appreciate my body, despite it often being a source of sorrow and pain. I still knew I wasn't a woman. I also knew that bodily autonomy and consent are intimately connected to human liberation. As a legal professional in my early to mid-30s, I met 3 chronologically younger attorneys who are transgender and non-binary. I had been identifying as genderqueer, so that was kind of my label, but as soon as I heard transgender and non-binary, like that was the identity. That's what I was looking for, and I was meeting these people who were smashing down the boxes between the L, the G, the B, the T, and the Q. And now recognizing that most of us are works in progress, and we are not really taught, especially my generation, too many skills on how to love ourselves, I thought I'd share with you some of the things that I'm using to sustain myself in these times. So taking the time to reflect on what makes you unique. I was exposed to such diversity of queer people that I was able to see possibilities and decide if that was the adult I wanted to grow up to be. You can decide which parts of your identity you like and which parts you don't. It's yours. Nobody else has to actually like it. Another shout out to the Queer Gym. It is I just have to give a big shout out to these wonderful BIPOC, fat positive, queers who are doing fully live Zoom workouts. And you can actually be in community with other queer people and go to a gym that is positive for our bodies. It has been life-affirming, life-changing. Check them out. I can't say enough about them. My polycule, my spouse, my co-parents, my kids, my dogs, and all of the other things I approach with intentionality and who teach me about unconditional love each and every day in all of its facets. And to you, the community and the next generation, look, this is all of you. I'm a person of non-binary and transgender experience, and I'm calling on all of our allies to speak up and call out transphobia and hatred wherever you are. And I want to also highlight a video put out by Them, Us, the magazine, and Teen Vogue. It's called Dear Trans Youth. Please, go online, share it. It's what we need to hear. If you can do one tangible thing for trans youth in your life, in your community, you will share this video. And finally, do things that make you happy. Wear the clothing that feels good on your body. Go by whatever name you want. Shave an iguana into your head and dye it green. Yes, I did this during the COVID pandemic. There are pictures. My family will attest to it. Y'all can do it. And if it doesn't make you any less of a valuable person. It didn't make me less of an attorney. It didn't make me less of a parent. It didn't make me less of a person. And look, we're all aspiring shapeshifters, says a young poet I know by the name of Phoenix. Go be your beautiful selves and show the world how it's done. So go out there today, learn all you can about how to affirm the transgender people in your life, to live your life to the fullest, and let's go show people what love actually looks like in all of its forms. Thanks.
Thank you, Celeste. So I'm Reverend Katrina Foreman. I'm one of the ministers here at Union Congregational Church. I just want to welcome you again to this place, this congregation, which is an open and affirming congregation of the United Church of Christ. We are delighted to be hosting the Trans Day of Visibility celebration, and a huge amount of gratitude to Out Montclair and all of the volunteers and people who have made this event possible. I won't say a whole lot more other than to say that whatever you believe, whatever beliefs you bring into this space, whatever religious belonging or non-belonging you have, I believe that what we are doing here today is holy work, because it is sacred for us to say and celebrate that all of the people of God are beloved. All of the people of God are holy and loved just as you are. So thank you all for being here. And without further ado, I want to introduce Peter Jacobellis, who's the executive director of Out Montclair and one of our council people and a whole lot more. But thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. I have to say, it's really hard for me to be in a church with a microphone and not break out into Sister Act. I'm gonna try really, really hard not to do that. This is not a space today for cisgender white men, so I'm not gonna take a lot of time and space. But I do just wanna say what I've been thinking about a lot. You know, I grew up in the movement, and throughout the movement, whether you go back to, you know, I remember Barney Frank and the human rights campaigns with the Employment Non-Discrimination Act saying, we'll do trans people later. Let's get our rights first, and we'll handle trans people later. And that stuck with me, and I remember saying, absolutely not back then. Cisgender white gay men we've gotten our rights by and large. We've secured our rights. And when marriage happened in 2013, a lot of the organizations went away. And we got caught by surprise years later. Here we are in 2023, and we're finding this community under attack across the country, being used as political pawns across the country. Your lives being held up to stir controversy. And it's really sad, and it's disgusting, and it's alarming. And I'm here to say that I don't think we're the gay rights movement anymore. I think we're only the trans rights movement. And we need to all stand behind the trans, non-binary, and gender non-conforming community. And so, as a cisgender white male who's been in this movement for a long time, I just want to say that I'm here to support that. And that's why Out Montclair for 2023 has launched a comprehensive trans program that you see starting with this, with monthly trans teen programs, as well as a summit that we're going to be planning in the fall, all thanks to the incredible work of Marie Cottrell, who's in the back and being humble as always, but one of our full-time employees who's going to be leading this work. I also want to recognize an elected official from New Jersey who's going to be representing Montclair, hopefully after the next election, and thank you for being here, Assemblyman John McKeon, and showing your support. It means a lot to have you here. And now I have the pleasure of introducing Sandeep Iyer. Did I pronounce that right, Iyer? Head of the Division of Civil Rights for New Jersey. And I'm not a typical read bios person, but yours is particularly impressive for the places you've been at the times you've been. So I do want to read it if that's okay with you, because I want everybody to hear this. Not only do you lead the state agency charged with enforcing New Jersey's civil rights laws, but you previously served as Assistant Attorney General and Senior Counsel to Attorney General Matt Plotkin, a Montclair resident. In that capacity, he was the Attorney General's principal advisor on civil rights matters and coordinated department-wide civil rights initiatives. He also worked with the Office of the Solicitor General on appeals involving matters of constitutional law, statutory interpretation, civil rights, and criminal law. Prior to joining the Office of the Attorney General, he was the Senior Associate at Hogan Lovells US LLP. And this is one of the spaces in time that I'm just impressed that you were there and glad you were. During his time at the firm, he served as Special Attorney for the state of Minnesota in the prosecution of 4 former police officers charged in connection with the death of George Floyd. So thank you for that work. He was also part of the litigation team that obtained an injunction against President Trump's travel ban and defended that injunction before the US Supreme Court. So 2 key moments when we've addressed major issues of racism and intolerance in America over the last 6 years, he's been at the forefront of that movement, whether it was in Minnesota with George Floyd or it was in Washington, D.C., fighting against President Trump and the travel ban. And we all remember when President Trump tweeted that he was banning trans people from military service. So we know what kind of a leader he was, or quote-unquote leader. And Sandeep was also one of the lead attorneys for a group of 8 plaintiffs organizing and challenging President Trump's rescission of the Barriers National Monument in Utah, which is another just incredibly important issue, is protecting our open spaces. So thank you for everything you've done. Thank you for being here, and welcome.
Thank you so much, Peter, for that unbelievably generous introduction. And thanks to Out Montclair for hosting this incredibly important day of celebration. And I want to emphasize that word, celebration. We're here to celebrate the innumerable contributions that trans, gender non-conforming, non-binary individuals make to our country and here in the state of New Jersey every single day. And I feel very fortunate that we have in our midst a number of those trailblazers. Folks like Celeste, who have done extraordinary work across the state, creating the Trans Affirming Alliance in order to protect the rights of trans folk across the state. But I also would be remiss if I didn't mention the context in which today's celebration is arising. And it's a moment across the country where we're seeing attacks on the trans community, on gender nonconforming individuals, on non-binary individuals. Just this year alone, this legislative session alone, across the country, there have been 430 different bills introduced seeking to cut back on the rights of trans folks, really across the country. And unfortunately, those bills take a number of different forms. Sometimes folks in other states are seeking to cut back on critical anti-discrimination protections that exist in the law. Sometimes they're trying to prevent trans folks, non-binary folks, from identifying themselves with their gender identity on state documents and state databases. And we all know what's happening across the country in public schools, where trans kids are subject to bullying, they're subject to attack, and there's a systematic state effort in many parts of the country to prevent the teaching of truth. Here in New Jersey, we're trying really hard to choose a different path. And I don't want to be unduly optimistic here. There is so much work for us to do as a state. We continue to see an increase in the number of bias incidents that happen, that target trans folks, LGBTQ folks more broadly. And we need to do way more to protect the trans community from discrimination. I have the privilege of leading the State Division on Civil Rights, which is the organization that enforces our law against discrimination. And the law against discrimination is one of the most powerful laws in the country because it protects against discrimination in employment, in housing, in places of public accommodation, which are any place open to the public. And it protects against discrimination, has, I'm proud to say, some of the strongest protections in the country against discrimination on the basis of gender, gender identity, and gender expression. And there are a couple of key initiatives that I just want to quickly highlight for you, and like I said, there's a lot more work to be done. But just last year, we discovered that a number of municipalities across the state were using marriage licensing forms that discriminated on the basis of gender identity. And we all know marriage equality has been the law now for a number of years. And it's not just gay marriage. Trans folks have exactly the same right to marriage. But some municipalities across the state were using forms that only gave people two gender options, and therefore forced people to deliberately misgender themselves under oath on an application. And so we've been taking action on that in order to hold folks accountable, because it's incredibly important that our government makes available services on an equal basis, no matter your gender identity, no matter your gender expression. We're paying close attention to what's happening in our schools. Schools are places of public accommodation, and it's incredibly important that we have LGBTQ+ inclusive curricula, that we're able to teach truth to students across the state, and that when a school district puts up symbols that are reflective of equality, things like the pride flag, that folks are not using anti-discrimination rhetoric as a basis for trying to take those things down. They're incredibly important for communities across the state. And the last thing I want to highlight is employment, because this is something that affects people on a day-to-day basis in their lives. Employment is the way that we ultimately achieve equity in our society, and I think it's important to talk not just about equality, but about equity. We have the Equal Pay Act in New Jersey, which is the strongest statute, bar none, on pay discrimination. And that statute prevents discrimination in pay on the basis of gender identity and gender expression. And our protections under the law against discrimination mean that if, for example, you're being deliberately misgendered by your employer, that's a basis for liability under the law. And it's important that folks know that. The last thing I want to say here is that we, as a state agency, have an obligation to go out and find instances of discrimination where they're happening. And it's incredibly important for us to do that, regardless of whether or not someone has come in our door complaining about discrimination. Some folks may not know about the Division on Civil Rights and the resources it offers. And that's why at the division we're creating a new affirmative enforcement unit to tackle all kinds of discrimination, but we're especially focused on discrimination against the LGBTQ community. Because here in New Jersey, we're choosing inclusivity, not to be exclusive. And I just want to highlight someone you're going to hear from later today, my colleague Iris Bromberg, who's a phenomenal resource and will tell you more about the protections that the law against discrimination will provide. If you do have a complaint, you can always come to us. Just go online to bias.njcivilrights.gov. It's easy to file a complaint, but we also want you to know that whether or not you file a complaint with us, we care deeply about these issues and are committed to making sure that we make a fairer, stronger, and more equitable New Jersey together. So thanks so much for having me today. This is a really meaningful celebration, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to be a part of it.
It really matters who we have in these positions, doesn't it? It's just something to think about. Now I get to introduce my friend Lauren. Lauren Albrecht, warrior, for sure. Professionally, Lauren is a full-time healthcare finance data analyst at AM Outsource vendor. On a consultant basis, she is proudly a lobbyist for Garden State Equality, New Jersey's largest LGBTQ+ rights organization. She is the chairperson of a statewide LGBTQ+ political organization and active in local and statewide civics and advocacy as relevant to New Jersey's LGBTQ+ community. Lauren lives in Wall Township with her family and her dog Shelby, who I've seen on social media, where she also holds the position of Democratic Municipal Chair. In her free time, which I could assure you she does not have much of, you can find her running trails with Shelby, enjoying the beach and live music, spending time with her family and friends, and particularly her niece, Leonora, reading historical fiction and nonfiction, watching true crime and paranormal shows, and knocking on doors, and raising funds for LGBTQ+ candidates all over the state. And I have to say from firsthand experience, Lauren is all over the state. I don't know how you do it. I think you have a time machine, but we appreciate you and all of your advocacy that you display for us. Thank you so much. Welcome.
I'm no Peter or Sandeep, so I need a mic stand and my notes because I'm a prepared person. All right, hi friends. So I'm Lauren Albrecht. My pronouns are she, her. I'm the chair of the New Jersey LGBTQ Democrats, and I also serve as Garden State Equality's government affairs agent. I also hate cameras. I want to thank Out Montclair for offering me this opportunity to speak with you about what's happening legislatively and politically concerning LGBTQ rights in New Jersey. It's my honor to do so, and I take these responsibilities very seriously. I also want to tell you that if you're here, I love you, and I'm happy to be here with you. And I'm honored to share a space with you because, as Peter said, it's a privilege to be a cis person in this space, and again, not something I take lightly, so I hope I do it justice. I hold great reverence for those in our community who, as Celeste so eloquently stated, are breaking down the boxes between the L, the G, the B, the T, and the Q. So I want to recognize and hold space for the fact that these are fraught and nerve-wracking times, right, particularly for our family of transgender and non-binary experience. It's daunting to read the news, to be inundated every single day. So I hope we're all taking care to discern what is a scholarly and reputable source and what is not designed to stoke fear and furor. So I hope we're all being gentle with ourselves about what we're consuming and how we're reading it and how we're taking it in and processing it, because there's a lot out there. In the 2022-2023 legislative session in New Jersey legislature, there have been 6 bills introduced that I would consider to be anti-LGBTQ, 4 of which are specifically targeted at our trans community. For some context, most of these bills were introduced at the beginning of the legislation session in 2022 and have not moved past introduction. I'm fairly confident that these bills will not be heard in committee or put up for vote due to the current makeup of our legislature, which includes our ally, as Peter pointed out, Assemblyman McKeon, who shows up and goes to bat every time, and there are many other members of our legislature who do the same. When the current legislative session ends at the end of 2023, these bills will expire, and if their sponsors are still committed to the cause of stoking bigoted rhetoric, they will need to be introduced in the 2024 session, which will be incumbent on their sponsors to be reelected first. So our legislature is up for reelection in November. This is important, put that in your head. It's not all bad news. There are presently 2 bills in the legislature that are designed specifically to protect the rights and bodily autonomy of our trans and non-binary community, their guardians, and their medical providers, which is key. As the legislature does tend to move at its own pace, in the interim, we've been in communication with the governor regarding an executive order. We're providing information and facts to help render that decision, and we're hoping for an executive order along the lines of the ones passed in Minnesota by Tim Walz, but expanding upon several points. Which brings me to my next point. We're in a church, this is a charity, but, and I'm never, even though I'm the chair of a statewide political organization, I'm still never comfortable talking about politics in a room full of people I don't know, and I've been doing this for 10 years. It's a fraught discussion, and I'm not here to stump for any particular candidate or political party, kind of. But what I will tell you is the hard fact is that it is dependent upon maintaining or increasing the Democratic majority in the legislature over the next 2 cycles that these laws do not move into committee and pass for a vote. I hope everybody realizes this. It is really important. I gotta tell you, I have a program that shows me if you vote or not, and I am horrified and flabbergasted by the amount of our community that just does not vote. Just does not vote. Has not voted once in the 20 years since they've been registered, or whatever, voted once in 2016. Every single time, it matters. And this brings me to my next point. I want to bring some information to your attention that you may or may not be aware of. I am acutely aware of it all the time, and many other people in this room are, but I think it bears repeating every time I have a microphone. If LGBTQ people make up 6 to 12% of the total population, equal representation would be 6 to 12% of our legislative seats. Our 120 legislative seats in the state of New Jersey being held by LGBTQ people, that would be 7 to 14 members of legislature. Raise your hand if you know how many we have. It's 1. It's 1. There is also a bright side to this. In New Jersey, LGBTQ people are running for office in record-breaking numbers, matching the national tone or outpacing the national tone. 3 LGBTQ women are running for legislature right now. 1 is a woman of transgender experience. 3 LGBTQ people are running for county commissioner right now, which is the highest ranking county level seat, 1 of whom is a woman of transgender experience. These numbers are unprecedented and a rightful response to the current climate, and these are the things that give me hope every day. I hope that this little bit of information that I have will do the same for you, and I hope you'll reach out if you have any further questions.
Right here. So I wanted to take this moment and introduce Shannon Cuddle, who is going to be taking and giving us a few words. I don't have your bio, so I'm just going to actually talk about Shannon and just what I know about Shannon, which is that if you want something done in the educational setting involving LGBTQ people, the person to talk to is Shannon Cuddle. And if somebody tells you that you should talk to somebody different, you should say, oh, that's great. Why don't you write that person's name down for me, and then I'm gonna write down Shannon Cuddle's name for you, and then we can exchange, and then we'll just meet somewhere in the middle, and we'll all get together for coffee. So without further ado, Shannon, can you please come up here, take the mic, and speak your truth, what you want to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Simone. Yeah, it's all good. We're all a work in progress, and I'm just glad that we have space here for community. So can we just give a clap for that? Because that's important. Because, I'm okay with not speaking, but at the same time, I'm just glad to have the opportunity. Thank you, out Montclair and Peter and all those involved. So my name is Shannon Cuddle. My pronouns are they and them, and I am an educator of over 20 years of experience. So I've been in the classroom, I've been a school principal, and I also have worked in education policy and advocacy. So I have a lot of those different experiences and wear a lot of different hats. And one of the other hats I wore, had the privilege to, in 2018, I became the first transgender person elected in the state of New Jersey when I won my South Orange Maplewood Board of Education office. Where I served on the South Orange Maplewood Board of Education as first vice president, then got elected by my peers in Essex County school board members to become their first vice president of the Essex County School Board Association, then also had the honor to serve being elected by my Essex County peers to statewide office to serve on the New Jersey School Board Association as the representative from Essex County and being the first LGBTQ plus person to do so, representing us on the state level. And I say that not because I want my titles out there, I say that because visibility matters, representation matters, right? It can save lives and it can change lives, and it's up to each and every one of us to empower the next generation and lift up and take those with us so we can continue the cycle of creating change. Because at the end of the day, the next generation of our leaders are gonna be the ones that are gonna take over for us, and we need to support them and empower them now because they are our next leaders, not just in our community, but the halls of Congress, a local school board, volunteering on boards and commissions, on our county levels, statewide levels, and in the halls of the White House. So as we're talking about these moments here in celebration and the need to speak up and speak out and be able to lift up these types of conversations for our allies to hear, and how we work to empower and build these intersectional, I'm gonna pause there and really strengthen that, intersectional moments, right? Where we have these conversations to come together, because we need to have a seat at every single table, everywhere, to make sure that we're being thoughtful and mindful to have these conversations to support transgender and non-binary plus persons, everywhere, full stop. Now, one of the things I want to talk about today is what's happening with our schools, right? Schools and communities. We know that trans students, our non-binary students, are not doing okay right now. But I want to give us hope, because hope is resilient, and that's what we need to use to empower youth right now. We need to give them hope. We need to give them messages of encouragement. We need to say that they matter, they are not alone, they are loved, and they belong here. And when we're talking about schools, we also need to talk about climate and culture, how we're creating welcoming, inclusive, safe schools and spaces for all students. Not just in the classroom, not just in the library, but across all, going from the hallways of the classroom to the streets that they walk every single day, across collective communities. It is so important. It is all connected. And our students need us now more than ever. Because what's happening when we're seeing across the country, and yes, here, even in the state of New Jersey, And yes, even in my progressive, beloved Maplewood Township and South Orange, we are seeing pushback against openly inclusive curriculum, pushback against being able to be supportive of our transgender, non-binary students and families. And we need allies to join us, to speak up. We need allies to join us and talk to their neighbors, their family, their friends, not just with a meme on Facebook, though that's helpful, right? But move it offline as well. Be able to join us in solidarity. Be able to speak out at school board meetings in support of inclusive curriculum. Be able to come and join us and stand with us to show that visibility, which is so important as we speak our truth to selves. In our schools right now, we see that boards of education are facing challenges and are under attack by outside groups that are coming in, mostly not even part of our collective communities, to try to dismantle, to try to take down, to try to censor and silence inclusive curriculums, books, and materials, to remove our trans and pride flags, to remove our safe space signs and stickers. This is not about anything about protecting children. This is nothing about a moral panic. A moral panic that is spread to make disinformation and misinformation that is only trying to gain political gain, to tear communities apart, to split information. Right now, I'm going to give you another call to action. Lauren talked about some of the bills on the state level, but there's even something that's happening with our State Board of Education right now. Our State Board of Education here in New Jersey, in January of 2023, decided that they were introducing to update the Access and Equity in Education Code policy in the state of New Jersey. It is a critical policy that affirms the rights of all students in New Jersey, that school districts and school boards must follow and be affirming. It's simple. They just want to expand our very inclusive language that we already have and just add sexual orientation and gender identity. Well, the State Board of Education has been coming under attack by folks and outside groups that don't want to see that inclusive language added. You have until May to be able to do and send public comment to the State Board of Education, the New Jersey State Board of Education, to tell them you want to affirm their Access and Equity Code policy. That we as New Jersey, we stand for trans and non-binary youth. We stand for BIPOC youth. We stand for LGBT youth. We stand for all of our youth. Because we know when we create inclusive policies inside and outside of our classrooms, when we have inclusive Board of Education policies, and I just want to do a plug right now for my South Orange Maplewood Board of Education. We have one of the strongest transgender non-binary Board of Ed policies in the state of New Jersey. That it matters for all students. All of these inclusive policies, inclusive materials, when we create welcoming, safe schools and spaces, it is not just for some students, it is for all students. And it impacts and it saves lives every single day. And just one more thing is that we all have a part to play. We all have a part to play to make sure all of our students feel safe and welcomed. We all have a part to play, all of us. Whether you have children, whether you have guardianship, whether you have a special person in your life that you mentor or you have special relationship with, it is on all of us in this room and beyond to ensure that all of our students feel safe and welcomed in our classrooms, in our communities. All of us. And our students need us. Our students need us more than ever so they can be their best selves, so they can grow into being the next leaders, so they can be the next adults that are in this room, on this stage, and holding office, because they are the ones that are going to be changing the future for us every single day. And the last thing I did want to say to you all is that if you are a young person here today, if you are a young person watching somewhere, to hear this message, that we see you, that we hear you. You are not alone. You belong here, we support you, and we will stand with you. Thank you.